Good afternoon. Hope you have been enjoying the conference so far. And today I'm going to cover several different things, but it'll all be about product management. So I'm going to start with looking at why product management is important, and then I'm going to go into the kind of good practice of product management. And I've been doing product management for about 15 years now in various different forms. I started my first product was real-time software for satellite operations way back when. I'm also the co-founder of ProdPad, and I work with and I also co-founded Mind the Product. Right. So, why is product management important? Well, there's two main reasons why product management is important. And the first and most important one is most products end up being solutions looking for a problem rather than a solution to an existing problem. Segway is the best example I could think of at the things because it is a wonderful novelty, but it doesn't solve anyone's real problem. And many of the products that you get created end up being these novelties because they're actually not solving anyone's problem. And the second reason is you start your product, you launch your product, you get it out there, you get traction, you get revenue, you get term sheets being thrown at you, you get the praise of the press, and then you suddenly start thinking you actually know more than your users do about their problem. And suddenly you start making decisions that are about you and not about your customers and not about the users of your product. And Foursquare is a classic example of that. They thought they knew more about why people used their product than the people using it. When they split their app into Foursquare and Swarm, they had a user traffic nosedive and their usage collapsed. And they've actually acknowledged that because they've brought back the social gamification into the Swarm app, and it's seeing an increase in the number of usage again. But what do I actually mean by product management? Lots of definitions around, but I'm going to give you the definition that we use at ProdPad and we use at Mind the Product. So product management is the intersection of the customer, your market, your users, technology, or how you deliver it, the engineering, and the business. You know, what business are you in? Are you a yacht company or are you a car company? And product management sits in that intersection. And usually then there's the role of the product manager, which is best summed up by a wonderful gentleman called Marty Kagan in his book Inspired: How to Create Products Customers Love, which is the role of the product manager, and they may or may not be a product manager, but is to create a product or discover a product that is usable, valuable, and feasible. Now, many organizations, particularly if you're small, won't actually have a product manager or won't have someone in that role. They'll have the founder or the co-founder. But if you're big enough to actually afford to pay someone to do it, I do suggest you do, because it really does make a difference to your product. So within the organization, what does the product manager actually do? Well, many product managers, or many people talk about the product manager being the mini CEO, which I actually think is very wrong. Instead, I prefer the analogy of the conductor, because the conductor is there, they pick the music, they maintain the tempo, and they also make sure that the various parts of the symphony are in harmony. And that's exactly what a product manager does. They're not necessarily the ones doing the work, but they're the ones who are making sure that all the different parts of the organization are moving towards one single goal, the product vision. And the big thing around this is that too often it's seen that the product manager is the kind of lone wolf out there charging and the market and winning. But actually, product management is a team sport. The product manager is there to to champion product management process and good product management within the organization. And so they're there, again, coordinating and encouraging and getting people involved within the organization. They're not there kind of being God about the product. So the conductor has their baton. They've got that to kind of keep the orchestra in harmony. The product manager has something similar, and they have two questions that they should be always asking. And the first question is, what problem am I solving? And this goes from the quite high level all the way down. So your product vision is actually the answer to that question at the strategic level. But then it goes all the way down to even the individual features. What problem is that feature or that change, that development, actually solving for the end user? And if you can't actually answer that question, then you need to go back and really think about what you're doing. Because if you can't answer that question, you're probably not solving somebody's problem. The second one is the question, is this problem worth solving? And it may not be worth solving right now for many reasons. It could be that it's not technically feasible at a price that people will actually pay. It could be the market is not ready for it. It could also just be that it's not part of the business plan at the moment. When you're a smaller company, you can't do all the things. And I think the Tesla Powerwall, which is a battery pack for houses, is a really, really good example of this. 3 years ago, if they had launched the Tesla Powerwall, it probably would not have worked. And there's several reasons for that. First reason is the market has gone from being essentially non-existent to existent. In the last 3 years, the amount of rooftop installs of solar cell panels have expanded dramatically. Second one is it took them time to learn the technology of the power batteries to work. And then it also reached a point within the business of Tesla that it made sense to release it. Now, the product manager is not the only person in the organization who should be asking these questions. Everyone in the organization should be asking themselves these questions when they're working with the product. Because these are kind of two key fundamentals of product management. The product manager will be the one who leads the charge, but everyone from sales to marketing needs to be talking and asking themselves these questions and these questions of each other. So you answered these questions. The next thing you have to look at in product management practice is to understand the context which in the problem exists. And by the context, it's where is the problem? Who has it? When do they have it? Is it after they're drinking beers at the pub, or is it on their daily commute, or is it when they're at home with 3 children screaming bloody murder? Now, the important thing is, once you start understanding the context, that starts shaping the solutions that you're going to potentially develop. It sets constraints, and it helps you understand where your eventual solution is going to come from. Now, looking at the context is even before you look at what device you're going to produce. So if you're building an app, you look to understand the context before you even worry about whether it's on a mobile, a tablet, or a laptop. The example here is if you're building an app for a market segment that doesn't actually have bank accounts, having that app require credit cards for payment doesn't make sense. And that's where understanding the context you come in is so important. Now, when you're looking at the context, you have to understand that people are not stock photography models. They have all sorts of distractions going on every day, and it's not just distractions of apps and notifications, it's also the distractions of stress at work, stress at home, all sorts of those things eat into the amount of attention and energy that they can actually apply to your app, to the point that your app itself is a distraction from other things. When you're coming to understand your problem and your market, you need to be aware that this is that people are distracted and they don't have the energy, 100% energy. And try not to use the stock photography model photos, because they distract from the issue. If you want to know more about this, Kathy Sierra has written a book called Badass Creating Great Users. Really highly recommended. So if you're going to take one thing away from this talk completely today, understanding the questions, those two problems in the context would be it, because that's fundamental to the product management process, and it will set you up for a good products. So product management, I'm going to now jump into the product management cycle. So it is a cycle. It's not an actual end, beginning and end. So it goes around in circles. But one of the key things to understand in the product management cycle is that it's actually non-linear. Within the actual cycle, there's various feedback loops that affect as you move around. So for example, your customer feedback will change the requirements, will change your specs. It will change your roadmap and your prioritization as you learn more about the actual product and the market and the needs that they have. So part of the product management cycle is you're going to have two different things, product backlogs and the product roadmap. So the product backlog is essentially everything that you could do with your product, as opposed to your development backlog, which is everything that you will do. Now, in good product management practice, it's actually better to separate out your product backlog and your development backlog, because they have two different purposes. The product backlog is more about learning and about discovery of what you need to be doing and solving the next features. It's your kind of continuous product intelligence. Whereas your development backlog is entirely about what you will definitely build next. You're really, really sure about that. The product backlog is one of the key places you can get everyone in your organization involved in product management. Because this is where you can have your sales and your marketing adding their ideas, adding the customer feedback, commenting and participating within your discovery of new things. But one of the problems that I've seen a lot with the product backlog is it becomes a black box. The product manager or whoever's responsible for that starts getting territorial. And stuff goes in one end and it may come out the other end. When that happens, people start losing trust in the product management process, and then you start losing that focus on the problem. And the product deteriorates because of that. So you've got your wonderful product backlog with all the ideas, your customer feedback, the analysis of your analytics and things. But how do you prioritize that? How do you actually then go to the next step of working out what to build? Well, this is where the product roadmap comes in. Because I have seen pretty much every single product manager has their own design for roadmaps. Some are super granular, down to out 5 years with individual week descriptions. Others are very kind of abstract and include a kind of big road and signs beside the road. But let's take a step back. What is actually a product roadmap for? The product roadmap is just about communicating the product vision and the direction you're going to go in order to achieve that product vision. And it's not meant to be, it's not a sales tool. Sales should not be using the roadmap in order to sell marketing shouldn't be using the roadmap in order to market. Instead, the roadmap is about communicating direction, and that's all it's about. And if your roadmap isn't actually communicating that direction, then you're not going to be able to get everyone on board going to solving your product vision. So this is the design of roadmaps we have used in ProdPad. And you'll notice it's actually quite straightforward. It was quite simple. So the roadmap, all they need is time horizons, scope, the strategic initiatives, and the product areas. That's all your roadmap needs to communicate in order to communicate the direction that you're going. You don't need dates, you don't need anything else. So one of the challenges of roadmaps are that they need to be flexible, because you actually, as you learn and do more product management, as you learn more about your product, you'll actually learn a lot more about what features people really want and what their latent need, what their real needs are. And you need that flexibility within the roadmap to change things as you go. And unfortunately, dates become milestones and a millstone around your neck. So the issue here is that when you were building your roadmap, you lay it out for 6 months, say, for example. You say, in 6 months, we're going to do feature X. But in that 6 months, you've learnt a lot more about your market. You've learnt a lot more about your people. You've learnt a lot more about your product itself. And so when you come to that 6-month time, you actually may find that product feature Y is far more important. But often with when you have dates on the roadmap, you end up still building feature X because you put a date on there, and you lose that flexibility to change your resources. And then you end up building something that actually doesn't add value to your product, and you're wasting and not building something that does add value. So the other one is the dates create a promise. And this is a promise that you say, we're going to have feature X by this date. And then when you invariably have to change the roadmap to adjust to changing in resources and priorities and all of those types of things, you break that promise. And then people start mistrusting your roadmap, and they start going around the roadmap, ignoring the roadmap, and it ends up you lose that everyone going the same direction to the product vision, because everyone starts going off in their own little directions and not achieving the product mission. You can use dates, but that's called a release plan or a project plan. It's not the roadmap. And at that point, you do know you're going to build that, and you do know the resources that you've got for it. This is why, and the sales and marketing, by taking the dates off, it stops they stop reusing it as their sales plan or their marketing plan. But one of the very interesting things we found with the roadmaps without dates, originally quite a few of our customers had the old types of roadmaps with dates on them and things, and then they switched to ones without the dates on it. And what they found is their own customers and clients became far more engaged with their roadmap than they had with the dates. Because when the clients saw the dates, they assumed that that was fixed. Without the dates, they felt that they could influence the roadmap, and it became a really, really important tool for engaging and understanding their client needs. It opened that path of conversation to help them learn more. So you've done your roadmap, you've built your product, your wonderful product backlog, you've prioritized, and now you've handed off stuff to the developers. But the product management process doesn't end there, because at that point, you become the arbiter, or the product manager's role is to become the arbiter of what is done. And you're not looking at how they've implemented or what they've actually built the solution. You're just looking at, did it solve the original problem that it was meant to solve? Also in the delivery, there's lots of other bits around, such as the documentation, the marketing plan, the sales briefing, all of those things that get forgotten about. It is, again, coming back to the product manager's role of being the conductor. It's about you have to make sure that that stuff gets done. Now, often you won't do it, but you have to make sure it's done so that it's ready when you want to make it available to your customers. And then you've done your delivery, and then you're back into restarting the cycle. Now, one of the bad practices I'm seeing in all of this is this concept of we have to ship. We have to ship now. We have to ship now. And it becomes a competition to see how many times a day you can ship new features to products. But that's actually not the important thing. You're not trying to ship. You're trying to create value. And the way you create value is by focusing on learning as quickly as possible. You need to spend more time in your backlog, in your analytics, in your talking to your customers, learning more, faster, and less time shipping. You want to spend as little time as you can shipping so that you're delivering as much value every time you actually release something or roll out a new version or build something doing it. The whole point is to learn faster than it is to be quick about building. So the good product management practice, it starts with the questions. It starts with what problem am I solving? And it goes on to, is this problem worth solving? You then have to frame the context of those problems. Where are they happening? Who are they happening to? What is the what do these people have that need to be solved? You want to spend a lot of time in your product backlog learning as much as you can about your problem before you go and build something. And you want your roadmap to communicate the direction that you're going to achieve your product vision. It's not a release plan, it's not a marketing plan. The point about this is it doesn't really matter how wonderful your technology is. It doesn't matter how good your sales guys are. It doesn't matter how granular your roadmap is. The problem, what you're trying to do is achieve value. You'll succeed as a company, you'll succeed as a business, not by having any of those things, but by building something that somebody needs and wants to use. Usage is far more important than anything else. If you deliver that value to your customers, everything else will follow. It will fall out of just delivering the value and making that product that people really want. And the point about the product management practice that today is essentially that by doing good product management, you'll deliver that value. And once you deliver that value, you'll have a business. You'll have something that people want and love.